I love my PlayStation 5 and we're finally getting stuff that feels like, it's of that generation. But like Demon Souls remake stood out on the PS5 because it didn't feel like something that could exist on the PS4. Every Xbox Series X game has to feel like something that could be on the Series S. And it just felt like they could never build momentum because of that.
Hello, everyone. Happy Tuesday. I'm Jeremy.
I'm Alan.
And we want to welcome you back to GG Everybody, your ultimate pop culture podcast where we hit start on all things geek. From video games and comic books to tabletop RPGs, tech trends, and beyond, we're here to level up your fandom. Whether you're a console warrior, a dungeon master, or just someone who loves diving deep into geek culture, we've got something for you. Each episode, we tackle the biggest topics, hot takes, and hidden gems across your favorite fandoms. So grab your dice, charge your controllers, and get ready to geek out. And admittedly, it's been a minute. We missed our last episode. Things got crazy busy. But I'm excited to be back behind the mic with not only Alan, of course. Alan, welcome back from your adventures.
Yay, I'm back.
Yeah. But Aidan Moher, welcome back, Aidan, to the show.
Hi. Thank you for having me back. I always have a blast.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Very excited to have you back on and to chat about some of these things today. But before we do, I think the last time we had you on, we talked a little bit about your, the other project you've been working on and got launched, the Fun Factor podcast. But yeah, I mean, how has that been going? And maybe another quick plug for folks who might be listening in for the first time and not know what Fun Factor is.
Yeah, so Fun Factor is a podcast hosted by myself and my friend Ty Schulter. And the elevator pitch is that it's two old guys reviewing old video game reviews. And so each episode, we pick a retro game mag. And so right now we're sort of focused on the end of the transition between the 16-bit era and a 32-bit era. So the launch of the PlayStation, Nintendo 64, the swan songs on the Super Nintendo.
Yeah.
And we pick a magazine. So we've done GamePro, EGM, our upcoming episode coming out. We're recording this on Monday. It's coming out tomorrow. It's on Nintendo Power. We go through the magazine. We talk about it in context. We kind of give history on the magazine, our experiences with the magazine. And then we do a flip through, look at reviews, look at letters, look at previews, and kind of contextualize what it meant to us at the time, how it sort of shaped us as games journalists now and fans, and kind of just have fun along the way. It's been a blast. People have been very excited about it. We've done a few bonus episodes for some of our ultra supporters as well, with guests like Mike Drucker, Molly Patterson. We had Sean Johnson and Epos Fox on recently, which was awesome to talk about demo discs. And so we're kind of running the gamut of all that like kind of what's it like to be a 40-year-old playing games. And so, we thought we'd be accruing a readership or a listenership, I guess, of other 40-year-olds, but it's been pretty fun to find a lot of younger listeners who are really as into the podcast and the topics as we are. And that's given us great conversation on our Discord and all that other fun podcast stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, I've been having a blast listening to it. And it honestly makes me want to like start a old like gaming magazine collection. Like I remember having them like in my closet. Like I had like, a stack of old, PlayStation magazine, EGMs and, even some old Nintendo Powers or whatever. And, I just remember, those like, vivid colors, like it would pop out on the newsstand, like wanting to pick them up. And when you do those flip throughs and, like spotlight, like really weird ads or just like the super cringe, like articles and features and, the various characters that sort of like wrote and contributed to these magazines. It definitely makes me want to go back do that. Yeah.
How has that shaped the way games are made and portrayed in the media and absorbed by people now? Like there's still this perception that games are for boys, despite the fact that I think a predominant share of like people who play video games are women or identify as women. And a lot of it we think goes back, and you look at it and these magazines were written, by 20-year-old guys for 12-year-old boys. And
Right.
that really kind of shaped how people perceived video games. And so we look at, we have fun, we laugh a lot, but we also want to understand it from, those perspectives too. And that's been really fun. I've learned a lot along the way. I have all my old video game magazines. I've spent 20, 25 years telling my parents, do not throw those out. I will read them one day.
Yeah.
And this is it. This is why I needed them. And it's been a blast going through them. And that 16-bit to 32-bit era is so like rich with stories and interesting moments and people who you recognize, writing for these magazines who, now are making video games or are still games journalists or they work at Nintendo. And it's just wild to see the through line
Yeah.
through all those generations of video games.
Yeah, the games journalist to tech video game executive pipeline,
Oh yeah.
or or not. It just
Yeah.
depends.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's been a blast. So if you haven't checked out Fun Factor, definitely do so. I know y'all have a pretty rich, social media platform. You got the Discord, you've got a
Yeah.
Patreon. So
Yeah.
definitely check it
Everything's at
out. Yeah,
funfactorpod.com. That's the best place to find us. And we're also obviously on all the podcast apps and stuff.
yeah. So definitely check it out. It's great. It's a great add to your lineup of gaming media. So and thanks again, Aiden, for joining us. So
Yeah.
excited.
Thank you.
All right. Well, let's get started. First, something that happened very recently, which is Death Stranding 2, which finally arrived. Hideo Kojima's latest work has landed to critical acclaim, universal acclaim, Metacritic might even say, with a total Metascore of 90, based on 114 critic reviews as of today, which is June 30th, 2025. There are a lot of really great comments. Like Game Rant says, after my disappointing experience with the original game, I did not expect to like Death Stranding 2 as much as I did. It's a huge world that's fun to explore. Its graphics are incredible, and its tools give players a great deal of freedom to choose how they want to handle every challenge that comes their way. Gaming Age says, if you enjoyed Death Stranding, you will almost certainly love Death Stranding 2. If you bounced off the first game for any reason, it has most likely changed for the better in On the Beach, and you may very well find yourself enjoying it this time around. Aiden, have you had a chance to get started on Death Stranding 2 yet? Or are you interested in diving into this world?
I have not played Death Stranding 2. I haven't played Death Stranding either, despite owning it. It's just always one of those
Interesting.
games that I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll probably get to that next. And then I just never do. My brother played through it a while ago, so we were chatting a bit about it at that point. But my exposure to it is sort of just through osmosis.
Yeah.
And it came out at an interesting time because it came out like right at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, which was sort of, appropriate from what I gather.
Mhm.
But then, yeah, other stuff just kind of always got in the way, I suppose. I have a love-hate thing with Kojima games, and that,
Mm.
you know, that has also played a factor, I think.
Yeah. Well, tell me more about your exposure to Kojima games then in general.
Yeah,
Like
I
what,
mean, I go
where does this
back.
love-hate relationship come from? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I go back all the way. Like, I go back to not the NES games, but Metal Gear Solid on the PlayStation. And so that was one of and remains one of my favorite games. I love it. I've recently been replaying it on PlayStation.
Right.
Um, and I really like that it takes itself very seriously, which is funny because it's also sort of absurd. But I feel like Metal Gear Solid and then Metal Gear Solid 3 sort of like thread that needle. Less so too. And I found that his stuff has sort of become, and I find this with honestly a lot of like really popular creators, whether they're authors or they're musicians. Um, at a point you get so successful that nobody can say no to you anymore. And
Mm.
that I feel like sort of has happened with Kojima over the past decade and a half.
Mm.
Um, and I don't know. So it just like I find that like the more recent Metal Gear Solid games were just a little leaned a little too into the absurdity. They just sort of like went Kingdom Hearts.
A bit
Um,
overindulgent.
yeah, and that just
Mm.
doesn't appeal to me. I like that as a layer of a game and not necessarily like, the game itself. Like when we got to a point where like Revolver Ocelot was like an arm or something, or Solid or Liquid Snake was somebody's arm. Like that kind of stuff started to be like, okay, this is kind of nutty. I liked when it was weird, a bunch of weirdos in an Arctic base. And you're like,
Sure.
hey, why is this weirdo like this? Why is Psycho Mantis like this?
Hmm.
The questions were always so much better than the answers. And once we started getting answers, it sort of started to fall apart for me. So that's where I sort of fell off Kojima's work, I think. And then that just sort of shuffled something like Death Stranding um, down the priority list. One thing I
Yeah.
saw for Death Stranding 2, though, were people who were saying, hey, I wish this game just didn't have combat. Someone else replied saying, hey, like mostly you can just ignore combat or there are alternative solutions except for boss battles, which is cool. But
Yeah.
like, I think it would appeal to me more if the challenge and the conflict was not combat related, because that would be sort of like a spin on the idea of this third person sort of like stealth action traversal game. Um, that would kind of supersede the weird Kojima stuff that I'm not always into.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've heard that as well. I mean, people kind of go back and forth, right? Like the prevailing narrative around Death Stranding was like the walking simulator, right? So,
Yeah, I
a lot
love
of people
walking
who,
simulators.
yeah, and
I
that's
want it to be
great.
more of that.
Yeah, and especially with the way that Kojima does it, because I feel like, you know, part of, to your point, and I can definitely see where you're coming from, like in terms of like the auteur in him, like the overindulgence, like the very like the obvious passion and love that he has for like cinema, and
Yeah,
the way that he sees like gaming and cinema sort of overlapping in like a Venn diagram, and the way that like so he presents certain scenes and stuff like that, like in Death Stranding, those early scenes, they're very slow, but when you are like cresting over like a mountain and the soundtrack just kicks in and you just see this beautiful vista,
yeah,
like there are moments in Death Stranding where, and they just come out of nowhere, and
yeah,
you're just like, holy crap, like this is gaming. Like, and it happens in a walking sim, right? And I haven't played Death Stranding 2 yet, like I said, but even like the trailer for Death Stranding 2 with Wood Kids into the Wilder, or to the Wilder, playing in the background and everything else, like I know that there are going to be more moments like that in Death Stranding 2, which I'm really excited about. Um, and so yeah, I hope that we can get more of those moments, and kind of like lose myself in that world for sure. Um, Alan, what's your what's your deal with Kojima?
I'm all in on Kojima.
Okay, okay.
Like I'm not. I love the weird. I love the storytelling, the characters. Like there's one of the characters is named Dead Man, and like he's literally made up of like composite parts of dead people.
Sure,
Like
sure.
I love that, all of that, and I actually finished Death Stranding 1 a couple of weeks back, and I put like a good 80 hours into it. Like my thinking
Wow.
was, hey, let me finish it to get ready for Death Stranding 2. But now that Death Stranding 2 came out, I'm kind of Death Stranded out. I kind of want a little bit of a break and
Mm,
play some of the other games that I kind of pushed to the side in order to play Death Stranding, like Clair Obscure Expeditions or anything. I still haven't played that. I want to start that. Lots of good games have come to Game Pass recently, like Metaphor Fantasio. So I think I'm actually gonna start diving into those before going back to Death Stranding 2, and because I know if I start Death Stranding 2, it's gonna be easily another 80 hours, especially the way.
oh, or more. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's bigger than the first one from what I've heard. So I think if you put 80 into one, like you'll probably put like 100 to 120 into two, if you like play it in the same kind of way where you really like want to explore
yeah,
and
yeah. Blessing Junior,
see
kind
more.
of funny, was talking about how like, oh yeah, like he felt like, oh man, I feel like I did some good progress, like 30 hours, and we're like, oh, you're just kind of scratching the surface. You got a lot more to go. So
Yeah.
that's the thing that, like, maybe I'll wait. Also, it'll help that it'll probably be on sale too later on. So I think I'd rather again go and play some of the stuff that I missed out on while I was playing Death Stranding 1.
those
But
are
I,
like
I
all
definitely will get into Death Stranding 2 eventually.
those are all the reasons I haven't played Death Stranding. Like every single one of those is what I say to myself, and then it just never, then I end up playing Dark Souls on my Switch 2 instead. Like there's always just something else that kind of pops up. And I'm like, oh well, like I'd love to play Death Stranding. Like I've never played The Witcher 3 for the exact same reason that I look at it and I'm like,
Mm.
oh, that's 100 hours. I could play 3 other games. Why don't I play those 3 other games for 100 hours? Then I'll play Witcher 3. Then I'll play Death Stranding.
But then by the time you're done with those 3 games, then 3 more games have come out that you wanna
Exactly.
put 30 hours
Yeah.
into.
And so like
It's a vicious
commit to
cycle.
something like that, it's gotta be Zelda for me. It's
Mm,
gotta be something
yeah.
that like is I have some emotional connection to, I think. It's really hard for me to like, I'll get surprised by a game. I got surprised by the first Horizon. Because I heard the
Mm.
story. If you just kind of played through the story, it was pretty short. So I was like, yeah, I'll just play through the story. And then I put 120 hours into it and platinumed it. And I was like, whoa, that was good.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
No, I had a great time with Horizon also. That's why I'm excited for an adaptation because I do feel like it would suit an adaptation really well with
oh,
that
yeah.
narrative. Like I want to see more of that story, kind of unified. Yeah. Um, yeah. So, anyways, I am stoked to dig into it. I think that you had mentioned Aiden like how Death Stranding came out like right before the pandemic. I think it came out in late 2019. So it was out for a little bit, and then with its sort of built-in systems for like network play and the way that you can like set up bridges and ladders and leave notes behind for people kind of like a la Dark Souls but a little bit more like
Yeah.
physical.
Yeah.
Those were the things that and the theme right of like we should connect like we need to like connecting the world when we were all at home was very prescient, right? And was almost like
Yeah.
a
I know.
sort
It
of
was
like a no,
wild.
yeah, like a Nostradamus type thing where it's like Hideo just kind of closed his eyes and like threw a dart and
Yeah.
like just happened to land like the gift of prophecy meme, right?
Yeah.
um
He has a history of it. He did it in MGS2 as well.
yeah, yeah, that's true. So that sort of thing I think really helped. Otherwise, what would be? I mean, it is, I think, a cult classic, Death Stranding, but it helped to give it a bit more of that mainstream exposure. And then, Hideo also got the documentary right on Disney Plus as well, which put a few more eyes onto like his journey, his work, and got people more exposed to the IP as well. So, um, yeah, I'm glad to see that Death Stranding 2 is doing well. That I think if it came out and it was sort of middling, like 75, 80, that I don't think it would necessarily like hurt Hideo's like vision. Like I think he's just like very committed to like his own way of doing things and his own vision and his own arc. But it would be kind of a letdown, as a climax for the Death Stranding project if, after all of that, it came out and it just wasn't really the best thing. So,
I do
yeah,
wonder though, like if he's happy that it's getting 90s because he went on record as like, if too many people like it, am I really pushing the boundaries enough? Am I doing
that's right. Yeah.
am I
Yeah. I
taking
saw an article. I don't know. I don't know how legit it is, but I did see an article or a headline that was like Kojima Productions made changes to the game because gamers were saying that it was too good. And I'm like, okay, that sounds kind of like, like the middle school brags on the playground where it's like, I was going to go out for baseball, but they said I was just too good. So I decided, whatever. I was hitting too many home runs.
I could
Um,
totally do a backflip. I just don't want to right now.
yeah, she
I
doesn't
like
go to
just
this school.
imagine Kojima like in his office fuming, like,
Yeah.
how dare you give it a
Yeah,
92?
yeah. They're like, sir, I'm sorry. It has a 90 Metacritic. He's like, what is this? It's
I'm
like
kind
that
of
scene.
surprised to hear that it's that the Metacritic's that high. Because
Yeah, it
a lot
is.
of the reviews that I stumbled across early on sort of criticized it for being too much in conversation, like too much of a retread, too much of like being in conversation with the first one rather than pushing boundaries, exploring something new in the way that the first one did so dramatically. Um, which was interesting. But then on the flip side, I saw like a lot of people or conversation, and there was a particular post on Blue Sky from Chris Person, Aftermath Chris Person addressing it. But a lot of people saying, oh, this is so great. Death Stranding 2 does this, and it's so cool. I love it. And then a lot of people being like, well, like everything people are like praising Death Stranding 2 for was in the first one. And,
Yeah.
Chris made a
Yeah.
good point that, like, it did come out at the beginning of the pandemic, and his, like, in his Chris Person way, he was like, "That's what happens when a game releases, like, right before a worldwide pandemic that, creates, like, permanent brain damage in the entire world's population." But it is interesting that, a game like Death Stranding that can be so popular still is finding new audiences with its sequel, and
Also,
surprising
I
people
like to point out
even if
that
there's stuff that's, happened in the first game, which I think is, like, and I'm so curious about how to reconcile those 2 opinions that I keep running across in reviews.
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the first one had a director's cut, and I think
Oh,
the
okay.
director's cut addressed a
Oh,
lot of the
interesting.
issues that people had with, like, the OG version from, like, 2019-ish,
So it might,
and
and
I
like,
think
I
that
mean,
might be the disconnect.
2 would have been in development, so maybe they were implementing features from 2 to help kind of improve the first one in that director's cut, right?
Yeah, there was that. Yeah, the director's cut was definitely more recent, right? So I think they started to implement it, and it's funny because some of the, I was looking through user reviews as well. User review averages on Metacritic right now are 8.8, so just shy of,
Yeah,
not quite the 90 or 9.0 that the critics are doing, but um, some folks are saying that Death Stranding 2 feels like 1.5.
right.
So kind of
Which
like that idea where it's, is it a director's cut plus, like there's
yeah,
some tweaks to gameplay and things
yeah,
that people wanted. Yeah.
interesting.
Um, okay. Xbox hardware is dead, gang. It's official. It's official. So there's
Like
a
Xbox
there
hardware.
rip. So there was an article that came out, or rather, first it was a video from one of the original founding members of Xbox, Laura Fryer. And she basically reflects on the current roadmap of Xbox as being chaos, and wonders aloud: is the flashy new ROG Ally the real deal? Um, she continues, there's literally no reason to buy this handheld. Obviously, as one of the founding members of the Xbox team, I'm not pleased with where things are today. I don't love watching all the value I helped create slowly get eroded away. I'm sad because, from my perspective, it looks like Xbox has no desire or literally can't ship hardware anymore. So this partnership is about a slow exit from the hardware business completely. Personally, I think Xbox hardware is dead. Um, Now, I will open the floor before I share some of my thoughts on this. Um, Alan, I know you and I have kind of gone back and forth on this in the past as well in terms of like Xbox's strategy, but like, I don't know, what are your initial thoughts when you see this individual basically say like, yeah, Xbox hardware is that this isn't the Xbox that I know and worked on and love.
I mean, she's not wrong.
Yeah,
uh, I think the fact that, like, the handheld they were rumored to be working on is now rumored to be canceled. They're just going to kind of go with backing partners like ASUS, and just kind of basically use the Xbox branding and sort of the Xbox 5 version of Windows, is probably indication that, they because here's the thing, like, making a device, manufacturing, shipping, the marketing, like, it's hard now. Like, it's just really expensive, with, and even after, we've recovered from, like, the peak of the pandemic, like, it's just kind of never got super easy to do that stuff. So why not let your partners at ASUS or Alienware or MSI take on that risk, that headache, and you just provide sort of like the platform and the software to do stuff. But
yeah,
kind of going back to what she's saying about, like, Xbox hardware is dead, like, yeah, because I mean, like, the whole reason, at least from what I've read and seen in documentaries and stuff, like, well, the whole point of, like, the Xbox was to have a box from Microsoft, like, in your living room where you would, buy games, buy movies, rent movies, stuff like that. So yeah, we could basically just see that go away. Especially like that, the announcement they made. I think it was like 3 weeks ago. They talked about their partnership with AMD, and they're like, "Oh, we have all these chips that will go on different devices." So that almost sounds like they're going to offer, their hardware partners, like, here's this configuration for, like, entry level performance, and then mid tier, and then like the ultimate performance, and you guys go make the boxes and stuff. But we'll work with AMD to make sure that the chip is able to deliver, X, Y, and Z at a certain price point. Um,
Yeah.
so in that sort of coming timeline, yeah, like we could have already, like, the Series S could be like the last like real Xbox box.
Yeah. Xbox box. What do you think, Aiden? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think like I don't think it's wrong. I think it's becoming harder and harder for companies like Sony and Microsoft to remain in the hardware business because they don't carve out their own niche in the way that Nintendo does. Nintendo does video games, right? And they do video games in their own way. They make hardware in their own way. Um, there's not a lot that separates the PlayStation and the Xbox anymore, especially in like ideology and the type of games that we get. The Xbox, like I don't, I there's some great exclusives, stuff like Avowed, is
Sure.
fantastic. But then you also have a bunch of exclusives that have ended up on PlayStation and Switch, right? You have stuff like Pentiment, which was like a big, draw for me, but it ended up coming out on other consoles. When Xbox was sort of first introduced into the marketplace way back when, the appeal was this like Western console that was almost like bringing living PC gaming into your living room. It was giving you access to like stuff like Morrowind or Oblivion in a way that like the PlayStation wasn't really going after, and it had that distinct identity. But as we've moved into a place now where there's the Steam Deck and there's the ROG like handheld consoles that are PC handhelds, like that's not a unique strength for Microsoft anymore. So what does Xbox have to be? And if it just becomes sort of like a brand, are they going to get more into just publishing more? Like I just don't really see where you go. It's not like Sega where they got out of the console business and then just started publishing more games. Um, where do they go if they get out of the hardware business? That's what I can't really wrap my head around.
I mean, they've been selling a lot of games over on PlayStation.
Well, yeah, and like, is that it? Like, do they just do the Sega thing and become a publisher? Like, maybe, but like, Microsoft is so big. Do they want to just be a publisher? Like selling hardware. They've never. I mean, they don't sell hardware. They haven't sold hardware like typically for Windows, right? Like they're a software company, and that's what always kind of made the Xbox strange is that they got into hardware. I know they do more hardware now, but
Yeah.
they tried to get in phones, they tried to get in, to all of these different places as a hardware manufacturer, and it never really worked. But if they stop making consoles, is it worth it to stick around as a game publisher? Like I just don't see that with Microsoft.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit when they bought Activision Blizzard,
Yeah.
right? Like, and just like the Xbox wing, and sort of like Satya Nadella like looked over and was like, "Hey, so we're losing like billions of dollars. What the hell's happening over there?" Right?
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
shaking down Phil and everybody else to be like, "You guys need to get your ish together, and basically, you know, need to tighten
We
up
need that money for
this
AI,
arm."
so like you
Yeah,
gotta start
Well,
working.
and
yeah,
I can't help but feel like that's a big part of this is Microsoft just looking to contract their business like as they shift focuses over the next 10, 15, 20 years, which is
yeah.
concerning to me. But
I
I don't know, like,
so
does
yeah,
Microsoft just become a Steam competitor? Like, do they basically become a storefront that, like,
yes.
funnels money through to developers and publishers? Like, and you have the Xbox brand as a storefront on devices? Like, is that what they're gonna do? Is that where they're
I
going?
we've talked about this. That's what I feel the evolution is looking like. So I mostly agree with what you were saying there, Aiden. I do think Sony's going to keep making hardware.
Mhm.
Of the three companies, I think that Nintendo has the clearest vision,
Yes.
which has always been Nintendo's kind of strength.
Mhm.
Like, is Nintendo has always focused on what Nintendo wants to do,
Yeah.
even when that meant making weird Nintendo decisions,
Yeah.
right? Like, they made the weird Nintendo decisions and they stuck by the weird Nintendo decisions. And they ultimately got to the Switch, which all similar to Death Stranding, right? Similar to other things that came out around the pandemic, like the way that that was buoyed, right, by Animal Crossing at the time and some of the other games that came out, during COVID, obviously the system had been out for a few years already, but like that really was um, a great time for gaming in general. But like I feel like the Switch really did have a spotlight on it in that moment. Um, but so I think Nintendo knows what they're about. People are going to complain about the Switch too and stuff, but like they have a clear identity. They have the IPs that we all know and love, and they're going to keep doing their thing. And I think Sony has kind of wandered off the trail a little bit when it came to the live service games, right?
Mm.
So when they adopted the live service strategy and they're like, we're going to make 12 live service games, and everybody who has any idea of how live service games work all looked at each other and said, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard in my life. And now we're kind of seeing that play out where multiple of these projects have been canceled, been pushed out, came out to middling reviews and killed, and now they're, contemplating killing some of them in the basket, right? Like, fair games, like who knows if that'll ever see the light of day. So, but even still, even with that kind of pivot, or that distraction, I do think that Sony is coming back around to the idea of we create amazing first party action game experiences. Like we're the home of Last of Us, we're the home of God of War, we're the home of, like the, Ghost of Tsushima. Like these are the games and the experiences that our fans love, and we're going to keep providing those.
Yeah.
Xbox does not have that same identity. The identity that they have is that they're building the best value in gaming with Game Pass. And the everything is an Xbox strategy. Personally, I think it's brilliant. Like I really like that idea of like, okay, it doesn't matter where you participate in our ecosystem. It just matters that you're in our ecosystem, right? Like play on your phone, play on a tablet, play on a, whatever you want to play on, but you're going to be in our world. You're going to have the connection with your friends. You're going to do the online stuff. I think that's their game, but that does not involve their own dedicated hardware. That makes sense to me.
Yeah,
So
100%. And I'm guessing that's where this former exec is kind of like, upset about it. Like, hey, we put these blood, sweat, and tears back in, what was it, the 2000s to like build this hardware thing that just didn't exist and no one thought would work.
yeah,
And like,
but I
we
mean,
built,
it evolves. Like you can't expect that the box is going to stick around, right? Like,
no, yeah,
and
but I
even
mean,
yeah,
that person is like, an engineer that went into the hardware side.
I know, yeah,
Like
yeah.
to
It's
see
like a
something
morning,
that
yeah,
you probably that like is really special to them, even though it's just a piece of hardware. But there are a lot of ideas and dreams put into that box, and now it's just kind of like we're not gonna do it anymore. But yeah, you're right. It's that's how it shifted. Like unfortunately, Xbox messed up at the worst generation possible, which was like the Xbox One, PS4 gen.
mm-hmm.
And I
Yeah,
think Phil Spencer has spoken about it, about how that was when people started building their digital library. So all of a sudden, it's almost impossible to try to convince someone to go from being on PlayStation over to Xbox and then like rebuy their whole library, which I think might be part of like is what's driving the whole Xbox Anywhere, because it's kind of like it doesn't matter where you go, like your Xbox games will be there. So that's why you can, that's why you need to be on our platform versus someone else's. And like, and I agree. I think it is kind of like their only way forward, but because they botched that sort of that Xbox One generation, people got locked in more towards PlayStation. So like you could put all the exclusives that you want on your box, but if everyone is like, that's a cool exclusive, but like, look at all the money that I've already put into like my PlayStation library. I'm not
right.
gonna, like
And
up
it's going to
everything.
come to PlayStation anyways, right?
Yeah, yeah. So at that point, like your exclusives don't help sell your box anymore.
One,
So you kind of got caught in that difficult position, and now it's like, yeah, okay, let's just do Xbox anyway.
one thing that like I've really struggled with is like even when they do get good exclusive series, like Halo's obviously huge, but then like they lost Bungie and it went to 343, and then 343 kind of like couldn't really keep it going.
Right.
They had stuff like the Tango Gameworks game. What was it called? The colorful one.
Hi-Fi Rush.
Yeah, Hi-Fi Rush. Like they
Yeah, yeah.
had that. And that was really exciting. I was like, more stuff like this. Microsoft become like the super cool indie console, like that just like inspires people to make games like this, or gives people the opportunity to make games like this.
Right.
But because of the state of the industry as well, like Hi-Fi Rush comes out and it didn't matter if it did well or not. It's never given a chance to then like eh, become like move on to the next thing. There's no like I don't have any ties to Xbox because I don't know what the future holds. Even if a great game comes out, does that mean I'm gonna get to play the sequel on Xbox? You know?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Like, yeah, that's a great point. Like, if you how do you have an investment in a console if you can't see like the longer term
yeah, and I see no
vision?
long-term
Right.
vision with Xbox, and so like I had a 360 and it was my primary console during that era. Um, I didn't buy the next Xbox and I didn't buy the Xbox whatever it's called. And like I just could never see that vision. Like, what is it? Like, what like what sort of exclusives am I looking at that I can't play elsewhere? There's great stuff like Avowed or Starfield. But if I'm really into that, I'm probably playing them on PC anyway, or I can get them on a handheld, a Steam Deck.
Yeah, and
Um,
that is again the big problem was like because it's Microsoft,
yeah,
they want gaming on
yeah,
Windows, so
yeah.
okay, we're gonna put it on PC too. So like Xbox never really had a chance. Once they kind of stumbled on that Xbox One generation, then coming into this one, you're also putting everything on. They had already started putting stuff on both PC and
Yeah.
Xbox. It's like it kind of became why have an Xbox?
Yeah. I
And
mean,
like
yeah.
maybe their hardware solution is something that's super cheap just to get people in the Game Pass ecosystem.
And
Like
that's what the Xbox Series S was.
yeah,
Like,
Yeah,
but like
I feel like that did really, and that's the gosh, that was such a fascinating project, like, and it's such a fascinating experiment because, like, the Series S, I think, did do a really great job of bringing people into the Game Pass world,
like
but that
crazy how they
also,
sold the X.
yeah,
Like
eh,
I think it was like
e
75% of like the Xboxes that they sold were the Series S kind.
like,
yeah,
don't you think that held Xbox back?
yes, and
Because,
that's what I
like,
was gonna
they
get to.
couldn't develop for the X. Like, they
Yes,
had like, everything had to run on the S.
yes.
And so, even the PlayStation 5 for the first few years, it was like, these are all just PlayStation 4 games. Like, these are all cross, generation games. So, like,
First off, how dare you? Secondly, that's very true.
and like, I love my PlayStation 5, and we're finally getting stuff that feels like, it's of that generation. But like Demon Souls remake stood out on the PS5 because it didn't feel like something that could exist on the PS4. Every
Mhm.
Xbox Series X game has to feel like something that could be on the Series S.
Yes,
And it just felt like they could never build momentum because of that.
yes.
I
I
also think the
100% agree.
Xbox naming conventions kind of fucked stuff up for them. Like, I'm a games journalist. I've been playing video games forever. I'm deeply embedded in this industry. I cannot remember the names of those consoles.
Yeah, like, and
There's
what order they
no like
came out in.
PlayStation,
Like,
PlayStation 2,
yeah,
PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5. You know,
yeah,
game Nintendo always sort of has some identity driven name for their console that makes it memorable. The Xbox One X, Xbox Series S, like all of that is such nonsense because there's no indication to consumers that there is progress. What tells you that an Xbox Series S is stronger than an Xbox One X?
yeah,
Like nothing,
exactly. It
right?
was
And
so
so they're
crazy.
different,
All
it's
the
just
memes about it are hilarious as
yeah.
well. Like, where it's like one Xbox One X,
Yeah,
like, or
I
two
love those.
Xbox Series X S's, whatever. Um, yeah, I agree. The naming convention is terrible.
Yeah, but like
And
I know that the U feels like the S has held back the X. But like I generally think that without the S, like they would be even worse trouble right now.
they
Like
would,
they
they
would not
would,
have sold enough X's like to
yeah.
to did they like
Well,
Microsoft might have just shut them down. Like S has
yeah,
been instrumental, and I think that the whole holding it back for the way modern game engines work, I don't think it's held. There are some instances like the Baldur's Gate 3 incident,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
I think that's more of an outlier than the because like when you look at the state of gaming now and how everything is like is it running on a Steam Deck? That's the first question that people ask. It's like
Right.
that clear and developers go out of their way to make sure that it works on a Steam Deck. And so like there's no way you can it can run on a Steam Deck, but like, oh, the S is getting, clowned on. It's just, I think that the way game engines are working now, it's just a lot easier to get stuff working on the S. I don't think S is holding them back as much as people think, and like the S has really saved them this generation. Like I think if they had no S, then it'd be bad, real bad.
Well, so two things, and then I think we should move on to the next topic. This is a great conversation, though. I love it. First, I think that if they did not have the Xbox Series S, if they had just committed to the Xbox Series X, it's not a guarantee that it would have been bad. And actually, it makes for a very interesting hypothetical, right? Like, if you only had the higher powered box, would it have been easier to establish an identity for Microsoft in the console space, right? Like, without having to play both, like, because they've been doing this now for a couple generations. PlayStation didn't play this game, right? PlayStation says, here's our PS3, buy it or not. Here's our PS4, you buy it or you don't, right? And then Xbox was like, well, we've got this lighter, cheaper Xbox, and then we've got this really good, powerful Xbox for people who want to buy like a really powerful box. But if they had just said like, look, we're Microsoft, we do hardware, we make a great box for your house. It doesn't matter that it's $600. I don't think it does. Right. And, that's what Microsoft would say. And then we would see what their fan base, how they responded to it. And then if you started to bundle in the Game Pass experience with the more powerful box, right? Now you were not only inviting developers in to that marketplace to develop for a powerful piece of hardware, but you're also giving more value to the folks who are like, well, yeah, I spent more money on my box, but I get all these amazing games and they all look fantastic and blah, blah, blah. So that's the first thing. I think it would be interesting if they just committed to the X. Second thing, we do not know the full extent to which the S existing has held back development. Baldur's Gate 3 was a very visible example because the game popped off. Like I think we even talked about a couple of those articles where it was like they offered Larian like some laughable amount of money to put it on Game Pass, and Larian was basically like, "No, go f yourselves." And then, of course, Baldur's Gate 3 became the biggest game ever. And so at that point, when they brought it to Xbox, they were very much like, okay, we really want to make sure that the folks that have invested in the Xbox ecosystem can play Baldur's Gate 3 on the S, where the majority of our players are. But just because that was like more prevalent doesn't mean that in the background, right? Like, we don't know how much it hamstrung the general development of other games as well, how much they could push the envelope, etc., knowing that, to Aidan's point, it needed to be able to perform basically at the S level. And then when you run it on X, it's like an S plus, right? Like you get, it looks a little bit nicer, but like when a game is designed from the ground up for a less powerful console, like you can tell even when it's on the more
And,
powerful
like, but
console.
that was also the way that they, like, positioned and communicated the consoles. Like, when the PS5 Pro was announced, Microsoft's response was, like, basically, "Oh, we already have the Xbox Series Pro. It's called the X." So then, like, the S is the base model, and that's their competitor to the PS5 base model. Like, there's no real
But it's
comparison.
not though, right? Like
But
you would
that's how they
agree,
position
like
it.
the PS5 is not a competitor for the S, like, and
No,
vice versa.
it's not.
Right.
But they're
Yeah.
having their like, if that's the way they're positioning it, oh, the S is our base model, the X is our pro model, like the PlayStation 5 and the PlayStation Pro, like, then you guys are
Yes.
like way behind on tech. And like, what's Microsoft doing if they're not, you know, leading on tech? That's always
Yeah.
been like, a part of their identity. So it's just weird. It's just a weird situation that they've backed themselves into, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think ultimately I will not be surprised if they move into more of this like gaming, like publisher gaming ecosystem space, right? Like, if they do stay in the hardware game, I think they need to streamline, right? I think they need to just boil it down to a powerful box, one box, uniform, naming convention, and just be like, look, everything's an Xbox, but if you want the best Xbox experience, you get this.
Yeah.
Full stop, right? Because that's what's going to help them, I think, to win back folks that are invested in the console generation. And I really liked what you had said earlier, Aiden, because I agree. Like when somebody plays Ghost of Tsushima on PS5 or PS4, right? When you played Ghost of Tsushima, when you were done with it, you were like, I can't wait for Ghost of Tsushima 2 on the PS5. Right? Like most people, like that's the sort of like line they can draw,
Yeah.
right? They're like, I can't wait to see the next iteration of this. It's gonna come and it's gonna be amazing and it's gonna be on PlayStation. Same thing with God of War, right? Like with Ragnarok and everything else. On Xbox right now, when you have a great exclusive, like if you finish Avowed, are you sitting back going, oh man, I just know Avowed 2 on the Xbox plus X10 is going to be so good. Like you, you don't say that, right?
Mhm.
Like you don't know where that next Xbox, where that title is going to land. It's going to be on PC. It'll probably go into PlayStation. Like you don't have that same investment in the ecosystem,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's so important.
And once they started releasing stuff like Pentiment on Switch and PlayStation, as soon as Avowed came out, I was like, "Oh, this is like so my type of game," but it's gonna come out on PlayStation. Like, I'm not gonna buy an Xbox for it.
Yeah,
Give me
yeah.
like a console handheld, like a handheld or a, set top box, easy to buy, and I buy it and it comes with a Game Pass subscription that's always gonna be 30% off or whatever,
Mm, hmm.
like to play on that specific console.
Right.
Um, Give me something like that, maybe, then I would kind of perk up,
Yeah.
but, I don't know. Give me
We'll
something that
see.
I can't do anywhere else, like, that's what you have to do to define yourself as a
Yes, you have to you have to
hardware,
deliver a unique experience.
yeah,
You have to. You have to know what your identity
or
is and
in the
or
handheld space, like the handheld PC space, you have to
yeah.
deliver an experience that's better than everyone else, right? And that's where, we've got a lot of competitors to the Steam Deck, and some of them are starting to separate themselves. And it's because of affordability, or it's because of performance, or it's because of, the hardware that they're using is just a better experience than what you can get elsewhere.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Mm.
That was a lot. A great conversation, though. I appreciate that, gentlemen. All right. So let's transition into one of the reasons why I wasn't able to record an episode most recently. Been on the road, been doing a lot of traveling. I turned 40 this month,
Hey.
Hey,
which was
congrats.
awesome.
Happy
Thanks.
birthday.
Happy birthday to me. But I went to MagicCon in Las Vegas, and I played Magic the Gathering, in my middle school years, and then my mom found my cards and thought that I was worshiping Satan. And so then I had to stop playing Magic the Gathering for a while, and then I picked it back up in college. All that to say, I mainly had like a single commander deck for the better part of the last decade that I would bring to certain game nights or whatever sometimes. But I wasn't really in the space. And then they announced the Final Fantasy Universes Beyond set, um, which, of course, for myself and millions of others, perked their ears up to get back into Magic the Gathering. Um, Not surprising to anyone, it is the best selling Magic set of all time, and has basically driven the aftermarket pricing on pretty much anything involving Magic the Gathering Final Fantasy through the roof. Um, they have these limited collector booster boxes that MSRP for $430, and now they're $1,200 on eBay. There are a number of
That's
like
insane.
there are a number of various surge foil cards, like special treatment cards you can only get in the collector boosters. Like the Sephiroth's like $750. The Ishtola is like $800. And then, of course, they have various neon chocobos, which are like very rare, which range from $1,200 upwards of $6,500. And then the golden chocobos, which have sold in the tens of thousands of dollars. And Post Malone has two active bounties out. One for the 77 out of 77, which is $200,000. And then if you happen to pull the 7 out of 77 chocobo, he's offering you $2 million. Um, all that to
That's
say,
more than he paid for the One Ring.
that's more than he paid for the One Ring. He paid one and a
That's
half million
wild,
for that.
man.
That's inflation, baby. But anyways, MagicCon was a great time. But I'm curious. I know Aiden, you've kind of like interacted with some of my posts and stuff like that on the Magic set. Like,
Yeah.
are you picking up cards? Do you get a commander deck? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. I've been playing Magic. I had a break for a while after high school, but I've been playing since like Ice Age, since like '94.
Nice.
And it is the big hobby for me these days. In fact, I'm staring at a stack of Magic cards, Final Fantasy Magic cards. I just picked up a couple of big boy cards, Summon, Knights of the Round, and Yuna, Hope Aspire, Spira for a
Nice.
Tomball Go
I
deck.
pulled my Knights of the Round yesterday. Yeah,
So jealous. I had to
finally.
find
I
mine.
grabbed a few
Uh,
play booster packs and I ripped one. I was like,
Must be
yes,
lucky.
that's what I need.
But yes, Magic is a big hobby for me, and also something that I spend a lot of time reading about, writing about. I'm working on a couple of features actually about this new set, and Magic fans will actually probably like the bonus episode of Fun Factor that we have coming up. We've got a fun little episode coming about Magic because it's just a really important game to me. It's I still play with a play group of my friends that I played with in grade one, same guys,
Wow,
and
really? That's fantastic.
yeah, it's pretty fun, pretty special. So
That's
yeah,
cool.
very very excited, very jealous. You got to go to down to Vegas for the convention. It's
I,
pretty amazing
eh,
stuff.
yeah, I mean, and again, like I haven't been in the hobby for many years,
Yeah,
and I was like, hey, if I'm gonna go to one, I told my wife, I was like, you can get me for my birthday, you can get me a badge for a premium badge for the MagicCon, because this set is a huge deal. Like I'm really invested in this set, and I want to be there. I want to go to the go to the making of panel. I want to see people who are excited about the sets and all that stuff. And so yeah, it was really cool to see. Of course, longtime fans of the game. I mean, they'll 10% of the fan base in any given time will tell you the game is dead and has been dead for years. But there's definitely a lot of that discourse happening now as well with the scalpers and the aftermarket
yeah,
uh, kind of insanity that's happening. But overall, I think they did a really great job with the set. I think the commander decks are really compelling and fun. Sort of out of the box. And I've just been having a blast, sort of like ripping packs. And if I got the Ultra Pro Cloud and Sephiroth binder, um, and I'm just working on trying to like get a complete set done just to say like, hey, I got the full Final Fantasy set. So, um, Alan, are you in the trading, the collectible card game space? Have you played much Magic the Gathering? Is any of this of interest to you? Are you just like zoned out at this point?
Thankfully, I am not. So like, I love me some Final Fantasy, and I'm like, this is some sick artwork. Like, I would be down for buying it just for framing and stuff because some of it is just really nice.
Yeah.
But then I saw the prices, and I'm like, I'm good. I don't need any of this.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like it's been cool to see. I have some friends who do love it, and they've been sending me pictures of like the stuff that they got. I'm like, oh, that's cool. But like, yeah, I have zero desire to like jump into that. To have yet another extremely expensive hobby. Um, my only real experience with like Magic the Gathering was like it must have been like 10 years ago. They came out with like a version that you could play on Xbox, and
Oh, was it
me and my
Arena? Did they put Arena on Xbox?
I
No.
think so. It was
Maybe.
a long time ago. Like, me and my friend would play
it
that
was
like
like
a
Duels of the
lot.
Planeswalkers. Was what it was called.
Um,
Oh, Duels of the Planeswalker. Okay.
yeah, yeah. I can't remember. I just know that was Magic. And we would play that on Xbox like a lot for a couple of years, and we enjoyed that. But we never really got into like physical cards.
Yeah. I have Arena. I have an Arena account. I kind of got into it for a while there too, just because it was a bit easier to be like, okay, like once every, I drop like $100 when the set comes out, get like the 90,000 crystals or whatever, get a bunch of packs, and it made it a little bit easier to, um, kind of engage in the set and participate in the meta and everything else. But yeah, this one I was like, no, I'm getting me some real cards. And if you introduce somebody to Magic, they don't have money for drugs, so that's good. Uh, so, anyways, um, we'll do one more story here. Let's talk about altars. So the altars, which is, I guess it's like a strategy RP. It's like a strategy game where basically you are kind of like scrubbing through a timeline to be able to pick out like a version of you, um, and then making like a clone basically like providing a clone of yourself to like help with like a base building sort of game. And it got some good reviews, and kind of got hyped up on like kind of funny and some other stuff. And so I was like, oh, that sounds kind of interesting. Like, with all the free time I have, I'll go check that out. But apparently, there was some temporary text. Let's see. I'm going to just read straight off this article. It says the Alters developer outlines use of Gen AI after backlash. It says the Alters developer 11-Bit Studios has confirmed its use of generative AI in the game's development process following fan backlash online. Weeks after the release of the Alters, keen-eyed fans spotted a wall of text in the game that include a clear Gen AI prompt and response, causing much speculation about how much the studio used the technology without properly disclosing it to fans. Over the last year, discourse around the use of generative AI in video games has reached a fever pitch, with the most vocal critics labeling it as being lazy, ineffectual, and a betrayal to fans. As conversations mounted around the Alters, 11-Bit Studios stepped in to clarify its Gen AI use and confirmed it would be removed entirely in a future game update. Per the studio, the AI text was simply a placeholder while the game was in development, and always intended to remove it. In addition, the studio has also confirmed generative AI was used in other parts of the game, most notably to translate some dialogue from licensed movies, which were added late in development. It says AI-generated assets were used strictly as temporary work in progresses during the development process and in a very limited manner. Aidan, what do we think about this? I mean, fans were for a bit upset. They wanted to be labeled more clearly on Steam, and the publishers got caught with their pants down. So, what do you think?
Yeah, not good. Like, not a good look.
Yeah.
Like, in some ways, I want to give the company the benefit of the doubt. Because these are like large operations, right? Creating a game comes with a bajillion different people working on it. I've worked in my day job, within teams. I've worked on, in creative agencies, creating lots of things. I would use placeholder text. I would just use lorem ipsum. But one time I used there was something called hipster ipsum, and it was just like silly lorem ipsum with hipster words. And I put that in a presentation for a client, and my boss didn't like it. And it didn't make it to the client, but it very well could have. I just thought it was funny. But that stuff happens without it, like that. It happens. It happens that you have somebody in the development team or the creative team or somewhere who uses Gen AI, and they have no problem using it to create some, generic assets for the game, even if the company itself doesn't endorse that or doesn't want that or doesn't even know it's happening. So I don't know how companies protect themselves against that, other than to, do they put it in their contracts? Do they, enforce it somehow? My guess is that whoever, did all the stuff for the Steam page had no idea, because there probably wasn't official use of Gen AI. I expect it was, somebody or some people who kind of used it without really saying anything to anyone else.
Right.
Um, if there's a pattern of this thing happening, then that becomes more problematic. It should definitely be labeled, or, their response. I'd like to see what they're doing to make sure it doesn't happen again, rather than kind of the vague, response that was given. Um, so it's tricky. It's like such a messy place to be with Gen AI right now, because so many people are so enthusiastic about it without understanding why it's unethical, and why it just sucks. Like, it just, whatever it produces is bad, and it's worse than anything that you could do. The if you need placeholder text, literally just go to lipsum.com. It takes 2 seconds and it'll give you as much as you need. If you need translation, get humans to translate it, because machine translation, LLM translation, is not adequate. And if they're using it casually in the background for temporary stuff, it's only a matter of time before they integrate it into their regular workflows.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, the and on Steam you can indicate, right, like I think, and that's part of the reason why they were in hot water, because there is a tag to be able to say we used AI, we used some Gen AI in the development of this in certain contexts. But it's almost when there was the push for environmental transparency, right?
Mhm.
Companies reporting out how much renewable energy, they generate, or, whatever the case might be. I feel like as we venture more into the Gen AI space, those sorts of reports and that sort of transparency is what's going to be needed, right? Like to be able to say, hey, and this is the argument that's always being made, right? Like Gen AI is a tool, like, or AI is a tool, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Like AI is a tool, so you should let us know if you're using that tool to build your game. And then let folks decide like how they want to do it, and like what level, what amount of involvement the AI is being used for, and in what context. Like, to your point, if a company decides to use, machine translation, if it's like Gen AI, and then there's like categories that they could place the Gen AI under, like, okay, is it just textures and backgrounds? Is it, just is it dialogue? Is it NPC dialogue only? Or is it, translation, like, for internationalization, etc.? And then if you see that, you're like, no, that's not, I'm not going to support a game that does that sort of thing, right? Because we want human translators and human resources for that. But yeah, I mean, I think it is. I also want to give them the benefit of the doubt, but it's kind of hard when they do respond with
Yeah.
a sort of like vague,
Yeah.
like half apologies, like, oops, our bad.
Yeah, when
Like,
they say it's oopsie, that's not, like, great. When
yeah.
and when I
To
say,
be
like,
honest,
give them the benefit of the doubt.
the fact that it was placeholder text, I think they said textures and backgrounds, and then also some of the language translations. To me, that just sounds like it's a studio where like Gen AI is pretty prevalent.
Yeah,
So I can see why the community is upset, and people
yeah,
who give them money for a product expecting to get something that they want only humans to have been involved in are upset. I fully agree that the whole I really love Steam's approach of like giving them a section of saying, okay, here's if cop to using AI, otherwise it's going to come back to haunt you. Um, the tricky part, I think, will be, will Sony and Microsoft, provide those kinds of like spaces for companies? I think that, Microsoft being very like pro AI, obviously, it's like that's like their thing now. I don't know if we'll see that, so I don't know how easy it'll be for gamers to actually like be able to make that informed of a decision. Uh, so who knows? Maybe we get legislation that says, "Hey, you have to mark, on your whether it be movies or TV or games that we use AI in such and such," and then people can decide, okay, I'm fine with you using AI, or I'm not fine with you using AI that way. But yeah, I think in this particular case, to me, it's like we just got busted, and
yeah,
now everyone's upset and wants to get a refund.
yeah. It's like, we're not sorry we used it, we're sorry we got caught, like, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
100%. 100%.
Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I mean, like, no single, like, storefront or developer can solve this, right? Like, we need to tackle Gen AI at the root. And like the theft of intellectual property that feeds Gen AI needs to be legislated. I think it's like impossible. And when I say like giving the company the benefit of the doubt, what I mean is like whoever's populated that Steam page probably went, "Hey, was there any Gen AI used on this?" You go to the leaders, some of the project managers, and they go, "No, like we didn't use any. We're good to go." So then they create the Steam page. They don't check that box, and then this happens because some buddy on the dev team used it without thinking to say anything, or used it for temporary assets and then forgot to take it out. And there's just no way to police that, right? There's no way for everybody in the company to know unless the use of it is just banned outright in the company, right? And so
Yeah.
how like it the toothpaste is out of the tube, but we're not going to put it in back in as an industry. Like we need governments to regulate this stuff to create a new tube. If that
Well, I
analogy
don't know about
makes.
you, but I feel so confident that this current government will
Oh,
be
yes,
able to
absolutely.
legislate in a responsible manner
They
on
definitely
something as
won't
complex as
write
Gen AI.
laws that, ban regulation on AI for a
Oh yeah,
decade, right? No.
that definitely will happen. Well, gentlemen, it's been great chatting with y'all, getting caught up on all the craziness that's happening. But I think we'll call it a day here. Thank you all for joining us on this epic quest through all things geek. If you enjoyed this episode of GG Everybody, be sure to hit follow, leave a review, and share it with your fellow fans. If you've got a topic or a hot take, please slide into our DMs on Blue Sky or email us at contact@thegeekthegrind.com. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, may your rolls be natural 20s, your loot be legendary, and your save points never be too far away. GG, everybody.
See ya.
Bye.